You're watching 12 WKRC TV, a new generation of news. 12 Newsmakers starts now.
Good morning and welcome to Newsmakers. The 8-county Greater Cincinnati region is a patchwork quilt of large cities like Cincinnati, Newport, and Lawrenceburg, small towns like Aurora, Park Hills, Deer Park, and vast unincorporated areas governed by township and county commissions. The sweep of suburbanization and development has transformed significant parts of those unincorporated areas, raising the question for some communities, should we incorporate? One such community is Hidden Valley Lake in Dearborn County, Indiana. This community of over 1,700 acres includes 4.5 miles of lake shoreline and is home for 4,400 people. In the last 30 years, people have built almost 1,700 homes, many quite substantial, in this private development, which was gated until last year. This past week, residents assembled to debate the pros and cons of incorporation and are currently voting on the issue. The results of that vote will be made public next Saturday, April the 20th. To discuss this issue, I am joined by two residents of Hidden Valley Lake. Craig Lysne is the president of the board of directors of the Hidden Valley Property Owners Association. Let's try to say that 3 times fast. And Dennis Boyer has lived in Hidden Valley for 15 years and is one of the leaders of the Coalition Against Incorporation. Welcome to Newsmakers.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Craig, what's driving this interest in incorporation? What are the real issues at stake in your mind?
Well, first of all, our residents have come to us several years ago and inquired about the incorporation process. So for the past 2 years, I have been involved with this and hiring a consultant, attorneys, etc., so that we can get the facts and information to our residents to see if they want to go incorporate.
But what do you think was at root? What was underneath that? Why is there some dissatisfaction, I guess, for some people with the present situation that says, let's even explore a change in this situation?
Well, the situation is, anytime you face this reality, is you have people that are adversely affected financially, or they just don't like change. And that's the downside of our opponents. We're looking into it for 2 main reasons. Growth. We started out as a private community, had gates and had a security force. Now we have a police force and no gates, so the natural time allows for this growth to occur. And this we want to take a look at and see if we need a government to run our community. Furthermore, one of the biggest caveats here is if we are in an incorporated area, we'll get at least $1.5 million from the Argosy Casino money.
Because of the income that the county gets and then distributes. And we'll talk about the details of that in a minute. Dennis, you've lived there for a long period of time.
Yes, I have.
What do you personally and the people that you represent, what do you see is behind this drive, and why are you basically opposed to it?
Well, I'm not sure I know what's behind the drive. Quite honestly, we're governed right now by the Property Owners Association. It's made up of a lot of committees and the board, of course, which Craig is on. And I think they've done a fabulous job. We have better roads than most counties and cities in southern Dearborn County.
And are those maintained, are those roads currently maintained
by our own dues?
Okay, by the dues that you pay. So this functions, even though it's not a condominium or landominium situation, you are paying dues which support roads and basic services.
And all the amenities, the swimming pool, the lakes, the ball fields.
All that's your responsibility.
All of that is our responsibility. And we get a lot for our money. We've got a lot of volunteers that put endless hours of work in to keep these costs down and to keep our amenities up. And I think they've done a fabulous job. They've taken over the rural valley utilities. They've spent $1.4 million in upgrading our sewer systems. Before they took it over, there was a 68% increase on the table, and we haven't increased our.
So your point would be that over the last 30 years during this development process, to the point that it is now, things have been well run, and they are well run now. Is that
Correct.
Your basic point?
Absolutely.
Would you agree or disagree with that, Craig?
Well, first of all, I would agree with that because I've been the president of the board of directors the past 3 years. However, I would say this, and because I am in the know, I could tell you that many people believe that the volunteer system is strained. Most of the elections for the board of directors, most of the candidates are the same people just running again. We don't get a lot of volunteerism for this non-paying, high-intensive time job. So, you know, I know Dennis believes that the POA is an adequate function, but
let's talk a little bit about this tax. Argosy spins off, as we've all read in the papers, and those of us who live in Ohio have sometimes salivated to see some of those figures.
Yeah.
It spins off significant amount of taxes. Some goes to the state of Indiana, but a lot goes to the entities, governmental entities in Dearborn County itself. Is that correct? Cities, the county, whatever, is distributed. Does Hidden Valley Lake get any of those revenues at this point?
Well, yes, we do. There are, the funds go to Dearborn County, some funds do, and they're distributed to unincorporated areas and other services of the county's needs. I've been there for 3 years arguing for funds, and it's gone down every year. And
so how much do you get from Argosy?
Okay, we've gotten as low as $35,000. It fluctuates each year. $35,000 to $112,000. This year they'll give us $50,000, and they basically said, listen, you need to incorporate and get your fair share of the money.
And how much would you get if you incorporated based on the population and size? How much would you get?
Well, we would get at least $1.5 million per year, and it's based on population.
Okay, Dennis, that sounds pretty tempting to me. If somebody's going to guarantee me because of a formula that I'm going to get $1.5 million rather than $50,000, what's the problem with that?
Well, two things. It's not guaranteed. Secondly, we have gotten money from Argosy, and I think if we maybe elected a county commissioner, we pursued this avenue, we could still get the money without becoming incorporated. Maybe not to the tune of $1.5 million, but the other, Greendale, who has to approve this corporation, is also not real happy about giving up some of that Argosy money.
I'm sorry, who has to, who's the other?
Our neighbor has to approve.
Your
Greendale.
neighbor being Greendale?
Greendale,
The city
yes.
of Greendale.
The city of Greendale, which for people who aren't familiar with Dearborn County, I think everybody knows about Lawrenceburg. Greendale is just to the north and is really seemingly flows right out of Lawrenceburg and then touches Hidden Valley Lake off to the east. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So because you touch each other, Greendale would have to approve.
That's correct.
Okay.
The whole issue when this came up was that the committee that Craig is on was not going to use the Argosy money as an issue. Now, of course, it's getting closer to election time. It's a bigger issue than it was a year ago or so. But the fact of the matter is, based on strictly taxes, increase from state taxes, it's less than $100 per family at Hidden Valley, and to create this monstrous bureaucracy for another $100 a family is just, it's not what we moved to Hidden Valley for. It's a laid-back community, it's a recreational community. We don't need it.
Craig?
Okay, let me say something on that. First of all, I've consulted with attorneys and spent 2 years on this project, and I can tell you quite frankly, it is a guarantee that we're going to get the money, and Dennis's belief is that it is not, and I don't know where he comes up with that.
Well, how about very quickly, though, what about if you lobbied better, which I think is one of
Yes.
the things Dennis is saying, that you could move that figure up significantly?
If I lobbied better to
whoever distributes the money. You can get
County
more than
commissioners.
$50,000 you could get.
Well, the attitude is Hidden Valley Lake is, and these people make their decision, yeah, if you can lobby better, but Hidden Valley is a rich community. You raise your dues and take care of yourself. Leave us alone. We've got some poor areas and rural areas that need to be taken care of. So, and I also want to say something about our committee came out with the fact that any Argosy funds would be a caveat, a bonus. However, our residents are pleading for this information, and that's why this is being brought out. This is not being brought out as a political
Another
ploy.
thing that Dennis said was large bureaucracy. How large would the city employment staff be that's created? And I don't only mean somebody to manage things, but I guess fire and police, et cetera, et cetera.
That is another misconception. We'll have one more additional employee. So I don't know what large bureaucracy they're talking about.
Dennis?
May I?
Yeah.
We're being presented with very low numbers at this point for a starting budget, but we all know when we get government involved, everything has a tendency to go up and not down. Greendale, for example, a city of the same size as us, has 45 employees, a budget of $3.4 million, twice the budget that's been presented to us here. And they didn't get there overnight, but that's what we're concerned about is escalated taxes, increase in...
Craig, creep?
Hey,
governmental creep?
Let me say this. We've been operating. I've spent 4.5 years on the finance committee and 3 years as on the board of directors. Our budget is pretty much, it increases each year, but not more than a couple $100,000. We control our budget and our expenses, and I don't see where, quite honestly, where we're going to double our expenses.
If you incorporate, would people still pay fees to the homeowners association?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, because we are going to, if we incorporate those areas that are truly private today, our lakes, our pool complex, our green belts and our dam, those would remain private, and that would be a POA for those specific amenities. Now, there will be some dues necessary to maintain those amenities, but one of the nice things that...
At the same level you're paying now?
No, much lower. Much
lower than you're paying
much
now.
lower, yes. But let me make
Okay,
this
quickly.
quick mention that when you come in town, the POA would sell the assets to the town. The town will have all the money. So let's say that the town sells the roads to the POA sells the roads to the town, gets $1 million. The town pays the POA approximately $250,000 per year for those assets. Then there won't be any dues.
Because that's it becomes an endowment, in effect, an investment fund.
This is one of the last late-breaking developments that I've heard about as far as selling the assets. It's always been we're going to give the assets to the town, and that's another reason we're opposed to this. We're giving up the tavern on the lake, we're giving up the parking lot, we're giving up sports complex, we're giving up, roads, okay, whatever. But we're giving up things that people at Hidden Valley that have been there for a number of years have fought hard in court, and et cetera, to maintain and to pay for. And these are all paid for. Now we're giving them to a town.
Are we giving them or selling them?
We can sell them if we want to, and that's been out there for a year. And I don't know why Dennis didn't hear that. We're not giving up anything. A lot of their point is we're throwing all these tremendous assets we worked so hard on to get. We're taking in from our assets from our community, transferring to our town. The same people will run them. The same people, we're not giving up and throwing anything away.
I have one final question, and we're running out of time. Let's say that 5 years from now, Ohio passes a riverboat gambling law that allows it, and a boat opens on Ray Street in the Banks, the new development in downtown Cincinnati. What happens to Argosy? What happens to that flow? What happens to that $1.5 million?
Let me say this. Argosy was one of the first there, and Louisville put one in, and another one went up the river, and Argosy is still the #1 boat in the country, unaffected by the competition. So I don't know. I can't look in a crystal ball, but they've been through it already.
Does this make, and very quickly, does this make any sense if you don't have that $1.5 million a year?
It makes sense, but it makes a lot more sense with $1.5 million.
Dennis, what about this thing I've thrown out about the possibility of Ohio moving towards this, which is only a theory?
I think it'd probably be Kentucky first, but whether it's Kentucky or Ohio, it's going to take a lot of business away from Argosy. And that boat is floating, and it can be moved anywhere up and down the river they want to move it. And Argosy,
although there's a lot of assets in Lawrenceburg that aren't floating.
Well, that's
hotel
true. That's
and,
correct. But
they're not just going to float easily.
The revenue can go down, and if you look at northern Indiana, where they have Riverboat Row up there, the competition is extremely keen.
And if I'm correct, people are voting right now. They can vote through this week, and you will announce the decisions next Saturday. Am I correct on that?
April 20th.
Believe me, we will be there. Thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay tuned. After the break, I'll be joined by the Chief of Staff of the Black United Front to discuss where she thinks the Front and Cincinnati go from here.
not only is there agreement between DOJ and the City of Cincinnati, but it's also with the African American community.
Welcome back. After more than a year of negotiations behind closed doors and public demonstrations, the class action lawsuit that was brought by the Black United Front and the ACLU has been settled through a collaborative negotiation. I am joined now by Juleanna Frierson, the Chief of Staff of the Black United Front, to discuss the significance and implications of those agreements. Juleanna, welcome to Newsmakers.
Thank you.
And we're doing this on Friday afternoon, so you've just had a chance to see the signing of the documents by the Attorney General of the United States. So this is actually moving forward. This is real.
It's moving forward.
One of the things that I was particularly interested in talking with you about was coming out of this, what are the responsibilities of the Black United Front as sort of a legal representative of the African American community as the way it's described here in the documents?
Right. One of the sticking points during negotiation was whether or not the agreement would be settled as a class. And we got past that, and it is a class action settlement agreement. That means that the Black United Front and the ACLU are class representatives. As such, we represent the African American community in Cincinnati and anyone else who may be subjected to use of force by the Cincinnati Police Department. A major part of the collaborative agreement is community problem-oriented policing. And we're out front in that. The parties, the plaintiffs are responsible for educating the community regarding the police procedures. And
that's a really important point that I'm not sure has gotten enough attention. There's been a lot of attention about the need for police education and, you know, re-educating police and changing policies. But there is this component about educating the community. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
And what will that mean concretely?
Well, we have to, part of the agreement is there's a big part of implementation. A lot of deadlines have been set. And so a lot of these things have to still be developed. But generally, what it means is that we will work with the city and the police department to come up with a plan on educating the community, on actually being involved in police policy, training, etc. But what we want to do is to educate the community on the responsibilities that they have and also the responsibilities of the police. Police procedures and practices change under this agreement, and we need to make sure that the public understands that. We need to make sure that the public, for example, understands that when a policeman stops someone, and that's been a major complaint. When a policeman stops someone, detains them, searches the car, etc., then and a lot of times the police in the past have just let the people go. Well, they now have to explain to them. They have to treat them professionally and let them know why they were pulled over, stopped, etc. The public needs to know that. They need to know what to cooperate with. We want the public to be aware that they need to be knowledgeable of the particular policewoman or policeman that stopped them. And also to be aware of what they should do when they're in contact with police.
In the sense that recognizing if they understand what normal, correct police procedure is, they need to understand that so that they can cooperate, right?
So that they can cooperate and also they can understand what is incorrect police procedure. A big part of this is taking citizens' complaints, especially regarding, say, the drawing of weapons. That was another sticking point during negotiations. What we agreed to was to do a 6-month study. So anytime that a policeman, policewoman pulls someone over and uses a weapon, points a weapon, then that could be a complaint that comes to us. We'll study for 6 months to see if there is some kind of a pattern.
And my understanding is that has to come directly from the citizen who's involved rather than an earlier proposal that every time that a gun was unholstered, the police had to file a report. The citizens have to make the report.
That's right. We wanted the police to make a report. What we've agreed to is that the citizen will make the report to the Black United Front or our attorneys. So again, that's a huge responsibility for us.
I want both of us to listen to a little bit of what Reverend Damon Lynch said on Sunday about a specific issue, and then we'll come back. If we could hear that tape, please.
History shows us if there is no pressure, there is no change. And so if April 9th through the 11th brought about Cincinnati Can, brought about the Justice Department, and helped bring about a racial profiling settlement that they didn't want to do, but we filed a lawsuit to make them do, you or I cannot turn our backs on the brothers and sisters who hit the streets April 9th through the 11th. Amnesty must be called for.
Was amnesty on the table in this negotiations?
None of the boycott demands were on the table, except for the Racial Profiling Collaborative Agreement, settlement of that. We had several meetings, which were non-negotiation meetings, but we had several meetings where the boycott issue was brought up. And over and over and over again, we insisted that the boycott was not on the table.
You insisted, or the people on the other side of the table insisted?
We insisted. The city wanted it to be on the table. The city wanted it to be a condition of this agreement, and we simply said no. It took about 10 hours, but no is no.
And why did you insist that it not be on the table, that it not be an issue negotiated during this agreement?
Well, first of all, we need to understand how this agreement came about. I think it was probably September, October of 2000. In our meetings, the Cincinnati Black United Front started discussing whether or not we should file a class action lawsuit against the City of Cincinnati.
Long before the April riots, long before Timothy.
What happened was Roger Ormsby and Jeffrey Irons were killed in November, and our decision was made for us. We knew at that time to file the lawsuit.
But why not fold that into this huge discussion that was going on anyway?
It is a demand. It is a demand that has now been met, but it is one of many, many demands, and there has been no negotiations thus far with the city regarding the demands.
Is amnesty the key issue that is holding up any progress on the boycott?
I wouldn't say it's the key issue. It is a major issue. The police who have been responsible for the latest deaths have still not been disciplined, and 2 have since left the police department. So someone still needs to be held accountable for that. And in addition to that, on the economic...
But before we get off of that, given that 2 have left, we don't know what will happen to the 3rd, but given that 2 have left, what can the city do now? Because legally they can't discipline anymore.
Sure.
So is there any way out of that box that moves forward, and what can the city do to take care of that and solve the boycott issue?
Well, you have to look at why did they leave, and why did they leave prior to something being done. That's an administration issue. That's a command issue.
But what can they do now?
So then you have to go up through the chain of command, and who is responsible for that? It's Chief Stryker. So something needs to happen there.
Are you saying that a key thing that has to happen before any progress on ending the boycott can occur is that Chief Stryker must leave that office?
Someone has to be held accountable for the deaths of those 2 young black men.
What about the safety director back in April, the Shirey several weeks later? Does that count for anything?
It counts for, thank goodness that they're gone, but still, were they released because of some inappropriate action? No, there was some deal that was made. Someone needs to admit that there was wrong, which Stryker did recently. He said Roach was wrong. Well, Stryker is Roach's boss. So someone needs to hold Stryker
What happens if Stryker leaves in 6 months, but he just retires without saying he did anything wrong? He just decides to retire and move on, which he's eligible to do. Does that satisfy the demand?
We would have to look at the circumstances under which he leaves.
Okay.
But again, that even still is one part of the demands. That's the police issues. You have your economic issues. the $208 million that have not been
Under the enterprise zone.
right allocated to the empowerment zone. No one's discussing that. It seems that to me what the city's doing is putting out these small initiatives, but they're really not satisfying the community the way it needs to be satisfied.
Okay, thank you very much. We're out of time, unfortunately.
Okay.
But thank you very much for being here this afternoon.
Okay.
Hope you can come back.
Sure.
Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Join us again next week to meet the women and the men shaping our community for the future. Have a good week.